Bart and Krista Halderson told their son they were heading to the family cabin for the 4th of July. No phones, no contact, just fireworks and freedom. They packed liquor, withdrew $4,000, and said they'd be off the grid. But that story was a lie. The couple never arrived at the family cabin. But why were their phones on silent, even as their family grew frantic? Why were both cars still in the garage if they left for the 4th of July getaway? What came next would shatter the illusion of the perfect suburban family and rock a small Wisconsin town to its core. Bart and Krista Halderson lived in Windsor, a quiet suburb just north of Madison, Wisconsin. They raised 2 boys, Mitchell and Chandler, in a 2-story home on Oak Springs Circle. Their house sat at the edge of a peaceful neighborhood where the loudest sounds most mornings were birdsong, the hum of a lawnmower, or the slow click of a sprinkler head. Bart Halderson was an accountant. He liked routine, working with his hands, was quiet, steady. He took pride in the little things, especially his lawn. You'd pass by the Haldersons' home and notice it right away. Manicured, clean, looked after. Krista was the heart of the family. She managed customer service at a local auto dealership and almost never missed a day of work. Krista was known for her bright red hair and even brighter personality. Her energy was infectious. She kept a meticulous calendar, and she poured into the people she loved most, her husband Bart and their 2 sons, Mitchell and Chandler. By all measures, the Haldersons were a typical, loving American family of 4, living the suburban dream, quietly and contently. Their 2 sons had grown up in that house. Mitchell was the eldest. He had moved out. He had a steady job, he was engaged to the girl of his dreams, and was planning a wedding. Chandler was 23. His parents sometimes called him Chaz. He still lived at home, but he came off as a bit of an overachiever. He had a girlfriend, Catherine Melander, who everyone called Kat. Even though he'd been dealing with some health issues recently, he had a very promising future ahead of him. Just 2 weeks early, the family had gathered for Father's Day. Everyone smiled for the camera. Chandler wore a neck brace. He had fallen down the stairs in their home, but he was recovering, smiling even, and seemed in good spirits. The Haldersons didn't make headlines. They weren't rich, they weren't dramatic, but they were close. And the small, quiet world they built, the one that seemed so ordinary, would soon turn out to be anything but ordinary. It started with a fall. June 17th, 2021. Chandler Halderson had slipped on the wooden stairs at home. He said he'd blacked out, suffered a severe concussion, damaged his neck, possibly his spine. His father was home at the time and heard the loud thump from the other room and rushed his son to the hospital. Oddly, Chandler insisted on wearing a neck brace, even though the doctor said scans showed he had a mild concussion at most and wouldn't even prescribe him prescription painkillers based on the test results. Even still, Chandler complained of blurred vision, nerve damage, memory lapses. To his girlfriend Kat and his parents Krista and Bart, it seemed like just another hurdle, a frustrating setback. After all, Chandler's life appeared to be on track. He was about to finish his IT degree at Madison Area Technical College. Chandler told his family he had landed a high-paying internship at American Family Insurance, obtained through the college, which he was working as a remote IT administrator and making good money. Even more exciting, he had landed a lucrative opportunity with SpaceX in Florida. He was even planning to relocate there with his girlfriend Kat, where they would start their new chapter. From the outside, Chandler's future looked very promising. He was playing and winning at the game of life. But behind the scenes, a much darker reality was taking hold. Chandler was playing a different game entirely. What was less known was how committed, addicted, Chandler had become, overcome by one thing. A video game called Escape from Tarkov. Escape from Tarkov is a brutal first-person shooter, hyper-realistic, tactical, ruthless. A place where survival meant mastering every corner, every sound, every threat. And Chandler was all in. Night after night, he played in the dark, just the cold blue glow of the screen. Headphones on, eyes locked. While the world slept, Chandler disappeared into Tarkov. His imagined world met reality when, a year earlier, Chandler had received an SKS rifle and 480 rounds of ammunition from a friend he met playing the game. It was his favorite weapon of choice, a Soviet-era semi-automatic that fired powerful rounds with deadly precision. To Chandler, it wasn't just a gun, it was part of the fantasy, and now it was sitting in his house. He wasn't working, he wasn't studying, he wasn't living in reality. Tarkov was his reality, and nothing else mattered. Not everyone could see what was happening, but his father, Bart Halderson, was starting to see the quiet signs of something deeper, something off. Chandler was rarely seen leaving the house. While he spoke often of the classes at Madison Area Technical College, Bart never saw textbooks or overheard a Zoom lecture. There was no syllabi lying around, no school emails, no tuition payments due. Bart was growing more skeptical, and the red flags kept piling up. He started digging. He read through Chandler's emails with school administrators, listened closely to the names he mentioned. However, hundreds of emails were sent between Chandler and the school administrators, Daniel Spieth, Aaron Hoover, and Alyssa Brandt, for over a year. Was Chandler really going to such extensive lengths to fabricate this lie, to forge emails, impersonate administrators, create entire conversations out of thin air, just to keep playing video games and avoiding real life? Was he so unwilling to face a single moment of accountability that he would gaslight the people who loved him most? Bart didn't want to believe it. He couldn't believe it. But behind every excuse, every vague answer, was a sun growing colder, more distant, more calculating. One time, Chandler scheduled a meeting with the school administrator, Daniel Spieth, to meet with the family, but it was abruptly canceled. Instead, Bart received a call from Daniel Spieth, who blamed COVID for the confusion and insisted in-person meetings were suspended. Bart hung up, turned to Krista, and said, "It sounded like Chaz," the family nickname for Chandler. Bart began confronting his son, but Chandler dodged, so Bart escalated. On June 29th, Bart Halderson took a decisive step. He called Madison Area Technical College, but he didn't say he was Chandler's father. He posed as Chandler, hoping to cut through the runaround. On the other end of the line was Omar Jobe, an enrollment officer. Bart explained he needed student records, transcripts, a printed certificate, maybe degree verification, the kind of thing a graduating student might request. But what Job said next confirmed everything Bart had feared most. There was no record of Chandler being enrolled in a degree program. No internship on file, no certificate earned. In fact, Chandler hadn't been enrolled in any classes since fall of 2020, and still owed the college over $2,000. Bart pressed further, asked about two staff contacts Chandler had often mentioned, Allison Brandt and Daniel Spieth. Job checked. No one by either name worked at the college. And in that moment, Bart understood. His son had spent over a year fabricating an entire academic life, creating fake email accounts, impersonating school officials, and sending himself hundreds of emails just to keep the lie alive. Later that day, Bart sent Chandler a short message. "I spoke to Omar Jobe." That was all. Then he told his son they were going to the Madison Area Technical College campus together, in person, on July 1st. Chandler Halderson was out of time and out of lies. So on July 1st, the day of the meeting with the college, Bart texted Chandler around 2 p.m. "I'm ready when you are." About 2 hours later, Krista, who was at work, would receive a text from Chandler stating Bart's phone had died and to bring home some soda. Krista responded to her son, K, with a smiley face. This night, July 1st, 2021, was the night Bart and Krista Halderson were supposedly packing to head up north for a peaceful 4th of July weekend at the family vacation house. but they never made it. Morning of July 7th, 2021, 6 days later. Chandler walked into the Dane County Sheriff's Office and reported his parents missing. Bart and Krista, he said, had left 6 days earlier, July 1st, for the family cabin in White Lake, Wisconsin. He told deputies they'd gone with another couple, friends, but he wasn't sure of their names. He said he'd helped them pack liquor and $4,000 in cash, threw some things together that night before, and hit the road early. On July 4th, he claimed, he received a text from his mother, Krista, saying they were watching the parade in White Lake and would be home soon, July 5th or maybe July 6th. But now it was the 7th and still no word. So deputies headed north. The cabin in White Lake was tucked back into the woods, remote, quiet, a family getaway spot that the Haldersons had visited for years. But when authorities arrived, something felt off immediately. The driveway was blocked by a fallen tree, its limbs gnarled and weathered. No tire tracks, no fresh footprints. The yard was overgrown, thick with tall grass. It didn't look like anyone had been there in weeks. Inside, the air was stale. Dust covered every surface. The cabin hadn't just been unused, it was untouched. And then, a detail that seemed small at first, easily overlooked. Chandler had told police that his mother had texted him on July 4th that they were at the 4th of July parade in town. But when investigators checked, they found that the parade was actually held on July 3rd, not the 4th. So Chandler's timeline was suddenly one day off. And that small shift cracked something wider open. Because if the cabin was inaccessible and unusable, and the parade date didn't line up, and no one actually saw Bart or Krista leave, then where were they? And who exactly was telling the truth? Back in Windsor, Chandler's behavior was not helping his case. Chandler had started going door to door in his neighborhood, asking if anyone had any ring camera footage of his parents leaving the house. He knocked on doors, peeked through windows, asked about surveillance angles. He looked aimless, mechanical, performative, as if he was going through the motions. These canvassing efforts were captured on multiple doorbell cameras, and they raised eyebrows. It felt like he was seeding a narrative, trying to establish a story that no one had actually witnessed. And the only evidence to support it was Chandler. And if Chandler was lying about this, what else was he lying about? A quiet erosion of facts, of timelines, of logic. And soon, investigators wouldn't just doubt his story, they'd begin to suspect something much worse. With investigators beginning to zero in on Chandler, his paranoia began to mount. He placed the following call to Detective Brian Shunk.
A little confused. I got 2 squads parked right outside my house, and they're not really canvassing. They're just kind of sitting there. Is everything all right?
Yeah, I mean, they're in the area doing canvassing, and they're also probably doing a shift change right now, getting our second shift crew on around 3:30.
Oh, there's 4 now. Something going on that we need to know?
Well, they're probably doing reports. They're probably doing shift change. You know, they've been going around trying to get hold of neighbors, so I'm wondering if they're in the area trying to catch people now that they're coming home from work. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to any of them in just a little while.
All right. Well, any news? My brother, I haven't heard from him.
No, as far as I know, they're still on their way up north. A couple-hour drive, so he's probably halfway into it, right?
Yeah, I suppose about.
Yeah. Any news on your end at all? Have you gotten any phone calls, text messages?
Gotten any messages other than from concerned parents? So, I don't know. It's kind of stressful. Sorry, so there's nothing new going on?
Not that I'm aware of.
Alright.
Yeah. Who's there? Are you at home still right now, obviously? Because you're saying they're outside. Who's there with you?
Yeah, no, now they're not with me. They're just 4 squads just parked outside.
Okay. Who was just talking in the background, Kat?
Yeah, Kat's over with me.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, I mean, I can definitely give you a call or message you, I guess, depending. What time are you planning on going to dinner?
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
pretty soon here.
Less than 12 hours after Chandler filed the missing persons report, claiming his parents had left for a cabin getaway, his story, stitched together with lies, began to unravel. And what started as cracks was about to split wide open. July 8th, 2021. Just after midday, police were called to a quiet stretch of farmland in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, a rural property owned by Cress Smith, the longtime partner of Chandler Halderson's girlfriend's mother. Turkey vultures flew overhead along the wood lines of the family farm, circling what would be a gruesome discovery. Authorities raced to the Cottage Grove farm. Tire tracks pressed deep into the grass, leading off the gravel path and into the wooded section of the land. It was clear that a vehicle had been there recently, forcing its way through the field. About 20 yards in, beyond the edge of the field where the brush thickened, they found the site. A shallow pile of sticks and dirt had been arranged hastily, an attempt to obscure something underneath. Officers pulled the debris back slowly. Beneath it, they found a human torso. The human remains, partially concealed underneath brush, wrapped in what appeared to be a silver emergency blanket, had been found. The arms were missing, the head was gone. The legs had been severed mid-thigh, crudely hacked off and left behind. Only a pair of boxer briefs remained, torn and soaked through. The body was dumped like garbage, left exposed to the elements, barely concealed with branches and leaves. When the torso was carefully moved over, investigators discovered 2 bullet wound entry points in the back. Near the site, an old oil drum sat on its side, rusted, hollow. There was a clean puncture hole in the side of the barrel, too precise to be random. Inside, they found scissors, a dull saw blade, and a pair of bolt cutters. The tools were visibly soaked with blood, covered in specks of what looked like flesh. The crime scene had clearly revealed a mutilation with shocking brutality had taken place. That afternoon, detectives asked Chandler Halderson and his girlfriend, Catherine Melander, to voluntarily come to the station for questioning. Neither of them knew that, just hours earlier, Bart Halderson's dismembered remains had been discovered on the quiet farmland in Cottage Grove. That evening, July 8th, 2021, Chandler was arrested. The charge? Providing false information to law enforcement. It was just the beginning. 6 days later, on July 14th, there was another grim discovery. Human remains scattered along the banks of the Wisconsin River. At first, they were classified as, quote, a portion of unidentified human. But the truth wouldn't stay buried.
Authorities say they've linked human remains to Krista Halderson, who's been missing for weeks. Her remains were found in the town of Roxbury. Her son, Chandler Halderson, was photographed there just before investigators made the discovery. Tony Galley reports on how the case against Halderson is growing and the sorrow that surrounds the family.
The words about the fate of Krista Halderson,
I think I've been bracing for it,
were still difficult to hear.
The Dane County Medical Examiner's Office, working in partnership with the Wisconsin State Crime Lab, has confirmed the DNA obtained from part of the dismembered human remains previously discovered in the town of Roxbury as matching 53-year-old Krista Halderson.
I mean, it was just heartbreaking is the best way I can word it.
Dave Whipp and his family were former neighbors to Bart and Krista Halderson.
By late July, those remains were confirmed to be Krista Halderson. The very next day, July 15th, prosecutors filed a criminal complaint. Chandler Halderson was officially charged with murder. The accusations now included 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and hiding a corpse. The missing persons case had finally come to a chilling conclusion. It was now a full-blown homicide investigation, with one suspect at the center. With Chandler now under arrest, let's rewind the chain of events and take a closer look at what really happened. It was around 2 p.m. on July 1st when Bart Halderson sent what would be the final text of his life. "I'm ready when you are." It was that text that would set off a chain reaction of horrific events in Windsor, Wisconsin. This was the in-person visit that Bart had scheduled with Madison Area Technical College, himself, and Chandler. The meeting that would expose the lies and deceit his son had told his family and friends for over a year. What exactly happened next is unknown. Chandler has never confessed, he's never spoken publicly, he's never told his side of the story. But based on the evidence, this is what investigators believe had happened. Chandler was lying about his serious head injury and claimed he couldn't drive, so Bart likely came home to pick him up to drive together to the college. At some point while inside the house, Chandler shot his father multiple times in the back with the SKS rifle, his weapon of choice from the video game Escape from Tarkov, the gun he had received from the other gamer about a year earlier. It's unknown how many times he shot his father or whether he died instantly, but what is certain is that Bart never left that house again. Next, Chandler sent his mother Krista the text message, "Dad's phone died, can you bring home soda?" A seemingly innocuous request, sent just hours after Bart's death. Krista replied cheerfully to her son, "K," with a smiley face. Later that day, a neighbor's security camera captured Krista pulling into the driveway. She walked inside the house, and now she was never seen again. How Krista was killed remains uncertain. We don't know if she was shot, if she suffered, if she was ambushed, but what followed was nothing short of horrific. With both parents dead, Chandler moved quickly. He needed a story, a cover-up. He began spinning a tale that Bart and Krista had left early the next morning, headed north for the 4th of July weekend with friends. He told Kat, his girlfriend, that they had packed liquor, cash, and left before sunrise. But the bodies were still inside the house. Chandler needed them gone, so he tried to burn them. Using a handsaw, household scissors, and even an axe, he began dismembering the remains. He tried to incinerate body parts in the family fireplace, but the fire was too weak. Even with a box fan blowing oxygen into the flames, it wasn't enough. Smoke filled the house, the fireplace glass shattered. Hot shards lacerated Chandler's foot. His plan to cremate his parents' remains was failing miserably. In a haunting video, we can see that security footage from a neighbor across the street that had captured the glow of the flames from the fireplace that night. July 2nd, early morning. Wounded and frantic, Chandler drove to the local Quick Mart and bought bags of ice. Back at home, he placed the remaining body parts in the basement freezer. The lie continued. He told Kat he couldn't hang that weekend. His parents had left him chores. He asked her to pick up hydrogen peroxide, cleaning supplies. He said he bled all over the place when he cut his foot. We would learn later in court that blood had stained the floors of the house, and that was another desperate, failed attempt to clean up after his crimes. Throughout this sequence of events after the murders, his girlfriend Kat really becomes an unwitting accomplice. She had brought over bags of ice and cleaning supplies when Chandler asked. She believed him and even stayed the night, sleeping feet from the fireplace where he had tried to burn his parents. By July 3rd, Chandler was on the move again. He drove to Lake Wisconsin, alone, and dumped pieces of Krista's body along the waterline. A crucial and damning piece of evidence from the prosecution came when Kat noticed his Snapchat location and found it strange. She took a screenshot of Chandler's location by the lake, which would put him right where his mother's remains would be found 2 weeks later. He told her he was passing through to buy some CBD. The next day, July 4th, he spent the holiday with Kat and her family at the farm at Cottage Grove, property owned by her mother's long-term partner, Cress. It was during that visit that Chandler spotted his opportunity, the woods. On July 5th, Chandler returned to the Cottage Grove property owned by his girlfriend's parents. He parked near the woods, out of view, along the tree line. After burying his father's dismembered remains, he resumed the cleanup. By July 6th, 5 days since anyone had heard from Bart or Krista, Krista's coworkers were very worried. She hadn't shown up, no calls, no explanation, but by July 7th, Krista missed a cancer appointment. That's when Chandler walked into the police station. He filed a missing persons report. He said his parents had gone to the cabin with friends, took $4,000 in cash, left before he woke up. He said they were probably at a casino. But police were already beginning to suspect the youngest Halderson. And the next day, July 8th, Bart's dismembered, scattered remains were found on the family farm, and Chandler was taken into custody. During the 2-week trial, the prosecution laid out their case with clinical, horrifying clarity. 3 SKS rifle magazines were found hidden in the wall of the Haldersons' basement. One of them was missing 5 rounds, matching the weapon investigators believed Chandler used to shoot his father. A shell that matched the gun was also found in the home. Boxes of ammunition were recovered from his bedroom. The jury heard about Chandler's desperate, damning internet history. Just days after the murders, he searched for "body found Wisconsin," "how to burn a body," and "how to make fire hotter." Prosecutors revealed that he fabricated email accounts pretending to be school officials. Accounts that, when traced, listed Chandler's own phone number as the recovery contact and even included his birth date. Security footage from a neighbor showed the glow of the Haldersons' fireplace in the early morning hours of July 2nd, at a time when no one should have been awake. That neighbor also testified to smelling a rancid, foul odor drifting from the backyard. Forensic experts confirmed that blood, DNA, and tissue from both Bart and Krista were found on tools recovered near the scene. Scissors, a saw blade, and bolt cutters discarded inside an oil drum. During the investigation, a chilling pattern emerged. As authorities scoured Wisconsin, recovering the dismembered remains of his parents, Chandler sat in the dimly lit bedroom, headphones on, playing Escape from Tarkov. According to his internet history, that's where he was, immersed in a brutal, hyper-realistic game about survival and deception, while the real consequences of his actions unfolded outside. Maybe he knew it was his last chance to play, or maybe he simply didn't care.
The first breaking news this afternoon, Chandler Halderson has been found guilty on all counts in the killing and dismembering of his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson.
We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Bart A. Halderson, as charged in count 1 of the amended information.
The trial sped up significantly this morning after both sides rested their cases. The defense, without calling anyone to the stand, and that includes Chandler Halderson. After closing arguments, the jury began deliberating at noon and came back 2.5 hours later with their guilty verdicts.
Chandler Halderson was found guilty in March 2022. His defense team called no witnesses. Chandler never took the stand. And at sentencing, the only voice in his defense were his lawyers. He received life in prison without the possibility for parole for the murders of Bart and Krista Halderson. No remorse, no explanation, just silence. If you found this story compelling, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. This has been a Rewind the Crime production. And just like every case, let's play it back. Let's rewind the crime.